The ceremony hall was the most beautiful place Cole had ever seen. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Light moved through the walls like living water, painting everything in soft blues and silvers. There were masters of beauty, and their royal palace proved it with every surface and shadow. Stood at the edge of the great hall, wearing his Earth military dress uniform. He felt out of place among these elegant beings. They were tall and thin, their bones visible beneath skin that looked like polished marble. They moved like dancers, every gesture careful and precise. Their eyes were large and dark, and when they looked at humans could see them thinking, how strange, how crude, how breakable. He had been on this world for 3 months now. A diplomatic posting, his commanders had called it. Good for relations between Earth and the Empire. Good for his career. What they really meant was that humanity needed allies in a galaxy full of older, stronger civilizations, and was here to smile, shake hands, and prove that humans were worth talking to. The ceremony today was for Princess, the Queen's only daughter and heir to the Empire. She was young by standards, barely 80 years old, which made her almost a teenager in their long-lived culture. She stood at the center of the hall, dressed in flowing robes that caught the light like water. Around her, hundreds of nobles watched as she received some ancient blessing from the priests. Did not understand the words. He did not understand most of what happened on this world, but he understood beauty when he saw it, and the princess was beautiful in the way that stars were beautiful, distant, cold, and impossible to touch. He was thinking about this when the ceiling exploded. Glass and crystal rained down like deadly snow. The nobles screamed, their voices high and sharp. Saw bodies falling, saw the beautiful pillars cracking, saw dark shapes dropping from above on cables and wings. Assassins, at least a dozen of them, dressed in black, carrying weapons that glowed with killing light. The guards moved to respond, but they were slow. Their people had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. They held their ceremonial weapons like they were not sure which end to point at the enemy. Did not think. He had been a soldier for 15 years, and soldiers did not think in moments like this. They acted. He ran. The assassins were firing at the princess. Of course they were. Kill the heir, break the royal line, throw the empire into chaos. It was simple and brutal, and had seen this kind of attack before on a dozen different worlds. Princess stood frozen in the center of the hall. Her guards were falling around her, their crystalline bones shattering under the energy blasts. She looked up at the death raining down, and she did not move. She could not move. Her people had forgotten how to react to violence. Reached her just as 3 assassins aimed at her chest. He threw his body over hers, wrapping his arms around her thin frame and pulling her down. He felt the heat of the energy bolts before he felt the pain. 3 direct hits, 1 in his shoulder, 2 in his back. The smell of burning flesh filled his nose, and somewhere far away he heard himself scream. But he did not let go. The princess was beneath him, small and trembling. He could feel her heart beating fast against his chest. She was alive. That was all that mattered. More shots hit him. One grazed his leg. Another burned across his ribs, gritted his teeth and held on. His body was a wall, a shield, the only thing standing between this girl and death. The guards finally began to fight back. Heard the sounds of combat, heard the assassins falling, heard the screaming stop one voice at a time. It took maybe 2 minutes. It felt like 2 years. When silence finally came, tried to stand. His legs would not obey him. He fell to his knees, still holding the princess, still covering her with his burned and bleeding body. A guard approached them, looked up and saw the guard's face, saw the shock there, the disbelief, the something that looked almost like fear. "You should be dead," the guard said. Tried to smile, it came out as a grimace. Humans are hard to kill. He looked down at the princess. Her dark eyes were open now, staring up at him. There was blood on her face, his blood, he realized. It had dripped from his wounds onto her perfect white skin. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head slowly, still staring at him like he was something impossible. Nodded. Good, that was good. He had done his job. Then the world went dark and he fell. When Queen arrived at the ceremony hall, she found chaos. Her nobles were weeping. Her guards were dead or dying. Her beautiful crystal palace was broken and burned. And in the center of it all, she found her daughter. Was kneeling on the floor, cradling the head of a human male in her lap. The human's uniform was destroyed, burned through in a dozen places. His back was a ruin of scorched flesh and exposed muscle. Blood pooled around him, bright red against the white marble floor. But he was breathing. Mother said, her voice small and strange. He saved me. He put his body between me and the weapons. He would not move. He would not stop. The Queen looked at the human, this small and crude creature from a distant world. She had read about humans, of course. She knew they were fragile and short-lived, that they died from things that would barely scratch her. She knew they were new to the galaxy, unimportant, barely worth noticing. But this one had taken wounds that would have killed any of her people. This one had used his own flesh as armor. This one had protected her daughter when her own guards had failed. "What is his name?" the Queen asked. "I do not know," whispered. "I do not know anything about him. I only know that he saved me." The Queen looked at the human for a long moment. Then she turned to her remaining guards. "Take him to the Royal Medical Wing. Give him the best care we have. If he dies, I will hold you all responsible." She looked at her daughter, still holding the human's head, still covered in his blood. "And find out everything about this man, everything." In that moment, in that broken hall full of death and glass, something changed in the Empire. They did not know it yet, but a single human had done what no one else could do. He had made the Queen pay attention. Woke to the sound of soft voices speaking a language he did not understand. His body felt heavy, like someone had filled his bones with lead. When he tried to open his eyes, the light hurt so much that he closed them again immediately. "He is waking," someone said in accented English. "Inform the Queen." Forced his eyes open again. He was lying in a bed softer than any bed he had ever known. The room around him was white and silver, filled with machines that hummed quietly. 3 stood near him, wearing the simple robes of medical workers. They were looking at him the way scientists look at a strange new specimen. "Where am I?" asked. His voice came out rough and broken. "The Royal Medical Wing," one of the doctors said. "You have been unconscious for 2 days." 2 days. Tried to remember what had happened. The ceremony, the assassins, the princess. "The princess," he said, trying to sit up. Pain shot through his back and he fell down again with a groan. "Is she safe? Is she alive?" "Princess is unharmed," the doctor said, "because of you." Lay back and stared at the ceiling. Good, that was good. He had done his job. "Your injuries were severe," another doctor said. She was younger than the others, and she kept looking at with something close to wonder. "You had burns over 30% of your body, muscle damage to your back and shoulder, blood loss that should have killed you 3 times over." "Should have," repeated. "Yes, should have." The doctor moved closer, examining something on one of the machines. "But you are healing, faster than we thought possible. Your tissue is regenerating at a rate we have never seen in any species." Almost laughed, almost. "That's just how humans work. We heal fast, it's nothing special." The doctors exchanged looks. Could not read their alien faces, but he thought he saw disagreement there. "Commander Cole," the young doctor said carefully, "I have studied xenobiology for 60 years. I have examined over 100 different species. What your body is doing is not normal. It is not ordinary. Among my people, the wounds you suffered would be fatal. There would be no healing. There would only be death." Did not know what to say to that. On Earth, he would have been in the hospital for a few weeks, maybe a month. It would hurt. It would leave scars, but he would survive. Humans always survived. That was what they did. Before he could respond, the door to the medical room opened. The doctors immediately bowed their heads. Queen entered. She was taller than had expected, even for a. Her skin was pale silver, and her eyes were the deep purple of a dying sun. She wore robes of black and gold that flowed around her like living shadow. She was old, over 400 years old, remembered from his briefings, but she moved with the strength and grace of someone much younger. She stopped beside his bed and looked down at him. Her face showed nothing. No emotion, no warmth, no anger, just observation. "Commander Cole," she said. Her English was perfect without any accent at all. "Human military from Earth, 37 years old, 15 years of military service, 3 commendations for bravery, no family, no spouse, no children." Blinked, "You've been reading my file." "I have been reading everything about you." The Queen's eyes never left his face. "I wanted to understand what kind of creature throws himself in front of weapons to save a stranger." "She's not a stranger," said. "She's your daughter, she's the heir to your empire, she matters." "And you, do you not matter?" Was quiet for a moment, "Not as much as she does." Something flickered in the Queen's purple eyes, something could not identify. "You are wrong," she said, "but we will discuss that later. First, I must explain something to you, Commander Cole, something important." She waved her hand and the doctors left the room silently. When they were alone, the Queen sat down in a chair beside his bed. It was a strange thing to see, a queen sitting like a normal person, speaking to a wounded human like he was worth her time. "Among my people there is a custom called," she said. "It is an old word, older than this palace, older than our written history. It means life debt. When someone saves your life through sacrifice of their own body, you owe them a debt that cannot be measured in money or power or time. You owe them balance." Frowned, "I don't understand." "You saved my daughter's life by offering your own. You did not fight the assassins. You did not run for help. You put your body between her and death, and you let yourself be destroyed to keep her safe." The Queen's voice was soft but firm. "This has not happened among my people in 3,000 years. We do not sacrifice ourselves. We are too fragile. We break too easily. But you did not break. You burned and bled, and still you held her." "I was just doing my job," said. The Queen shook her head. "No, your job was to stand in corners and smile at diplomatic functions. Your job was to make your species look good. Your job was not to die for my daughter." She leaned forward and her eyes were like purple fire. "You chose to do that, and because you chose, I owe you a debt that I do not know how to repay." Wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that it was nothing, that any human would have done the same, that she owed him nothing at all. But something in her face stopped him. This was not a small thing to her. This was not politics or diplomacy. This was something ancient and deep, something built into the bones of her people. "What happens now?" he asked instead. "Now," the Queen said, "you stay. You remain in this palace as my honored guest until I determine how to restore balance between us. Your government has already been informed. They protested, of course. I ignored them. You can't just keep me here. I am the Queen of the Empire. I can do whatever I wish." She stood up, and suddenly she was not a woman sitting by a bedside anymore. She was a ruler, ancient and powerful, and absolutely certain of her own authority. "You will be given anything you need, anything you want, but you will not leave until I say you can leave." Stared at her. He should be angry. He should demand to speak to his commanders. He should assert his rights as a citizen of Earth. But something in the Queen's eyes told him that none of that would matter. "There's something else," he said slowly, "something you're not telling me." The Queen paused at the door. "The ones who tried to kill my daughter, they are part of a group called the Obsidian Covenant. They believe my family has grown weak. They believe our entire species has grown weak." She looked back at him, and for the first time he saw something other than cold authority in her face. He saw worry. He saw fear. "They are not done. They will try again." "And you think I can help?" "I think," the Queen said softly, That you already have. She left, lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling his wounds slowly heal. He had come to this world to smile at parties and shake hands with aliens. Now he was caught in something much bigger, something much more dangerous. And for reasons he could not explain, part of him was glad. The story spread like fire through dry grass. Within a week, everyone in the Empire had heard about the human who saved Princess. Within 2 weeks, the story had reached other worlds. Within a month, Cole had become the most famous human in the galaxy. But the stories they told were not quite true. In some versions, had killed a dozen assassins with his bare hands before shielding the princess. In others, he had taken 100 energy blasts and walked away laughing. One popular tale said he had caught a falling pillar and held it above his head while the princess escaped. Another claimed he had been dead for 10 minutes before his heart started beating again through pure force of will. Found all of this very strange. He had not done any of those things. He had simply covered a girl with his body and refused to move. That was all. But that was enough. You do not understand, Princess told him one afternoon. She had started visiting him every day once the doctors allowed visitors. My people cannot do what you did. Our bones are like crystal, beautiful but fragile. One of those energy blasts would have shattered my skeleton. 2 would have killed me instantly, but you took 3 to your back and lived. I got lucky, he said. No, shook her head. Her dark hair moved like silk. Luck is when something happens by chance. What you did was not chance. Your body is built to survive damage that would destroy us. Your muscles repair themselves. Your blood grows back. Your skin heals over wounds in days instead of months. She reached out and touched his arm. Her fingers were cool and light, barely pressing against his skin. You are like something from our oldest stories, she said quietly. Like the warriors who existed before we learned to be fragile. We thought those warriors were myths, legends, but then you came. Did not know what to say. He was just a man, a soldier, nothing special. But when he looked into his eyes, he saw that she did not believe that. To her, he was something wonderful, something impossible. The requests started arriving the next day. Nobles wanted to meet him. Scientists wanted to study him. Historians wanted to record his story. Warriors from the ancient military caste, men and women who had held only ceremonial positions for centuries, wanted to watch him train and learn how humans fought. The queen approved all the requests. She seemed to want the empire to see him, to know that a human had done what no could do. Did not understand why, but he went along with it. He met with nobles who stared at his scars like they were holy marks. He let scientists take blood samples and measure his healing rate. He answered the same questions over and over. Why did you do it? Were you not afraid? How did you survive? And he always gave the same answer. I saw someone in danger. I moved. That is what humans do. They did not seem to understand this. To them, every action required calculation. Risk and reward had to be balanced. No one sacrificed themselves without knowing exactly what they would gain. But humans were different. Humans acted on instinct, on emotion, on some deep part of their souls that did not care about survival. When someone they cared about was in danger, they moved. They protected. They fought. Even if it killed them. Kept visiting every day. At first thought she came out of obligation. He had saved her life, so she owed him kindness. But as the weeks passed, he realized it was something else. She was curious about him, fascinated by him. She wanted to understand this strange creature who had broken all her assumptions about the universe. Why do humans live such short lives? She asked one evening. They were sitting in the palace gardens, surrounded by flowers that glowed with their own inner light. You could only survive for perhaps 80 or 90 years. My mother is over 400. I am 82 and I am considered young. Does it not bother you knowing you will die so soon? Thought about the question. He had never really considered it before. I think it makes us live differently, he said finally. We know we do not have much time, so we try to make every moment matter. We love harder. We fight harder. We take risks that longer-lived species would never take. Because you have nothing to lose. Because we have everything to lose, and we want to lose it doing something that matters. Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. The ones who tried to kill me, the Obsidian Covenant, they believe my family is weak. They believe our entire species has become too soft, too careful, too afraid of pain and death. She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes. I thought they were wrong. Now I am not sure. We have forgotten how to be brave. We have forgotten how to sacrifice. You could learn, said. Could we? Would you teach us? It was a strange question. Had come to this world to shake hands and smile. He had not come to teach an ancient alien species how to be warriors. But something in his eyes made him want to try. I could teach you, he said slowly. But bravery is not about strength or speed or fighting skill. It is about being willing to suffer for something that matters. It is about choosing to feel pain because the alternative is worse. That sounds terrible, said. Smiled, it is terrible, but it is also the most human thing I know. They sat in silence for a while, watching the glowing flowers bloom and fade in the alien night. Then asked another question, the most important question anyone had asked him since he arrived on this world. If the Covenant attacks again, will you protect me? Did not hesitate, yes. Even if it kills you? Yes. Why? He thought about his answer for a long time. He thought about duty and honor and all the things soldiers were supposed to care about. But in the end, the truth was simpler than that. Because you asked me to, he said, and because I want to. Stared at him. Then slowly she smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile since the attack. It changed her whole face, made her look young and alive and full of hope. I am glad you came to our world, Cole, she said. I am glad you saved my life. So am I, said. And he meant it. Far away in the shadows of the Empire, the Obsidian Covenant was watching. They had failed to kill the princess once. They would not fail again. But now there was a new problem, a human problem. They would have to deal with that first. The summons came at midnight. A guard appeared at its door, bowing low in the way. The Queen wishes to speak with you, in her private chambers, now. Had been on this world for 3 months. He had met with nobles, scientists, and warriors. He had eaten dinner with the princess. He had explored the palace and learned its secrets. But he had never been invited to the Queen's private chambers. No one was invited there. It was the most sacred space in the entire empire. Something important was about to happen. He followed the guard through corridors of crystal and shadow. The palace was quiet at this hour, empty except for the soft footsteps of night servants. Finally, they reached a door made of solid black stone, carved with symbols older than human civilization. The guard bowed again and left, stood alone before the door. It opened by itself. The Queen's chambers were smaller than expected. There were no thrones, no golden decorations, no signs of royal power. Just a simple room with simple furniture and a window that looked out at the stars. Queen sat by the window, dressed in plain gray robes. Without her crown and her formal clothes, she looked almost ordinary, almost human. Almost. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair across from her. We have much to discuss. Sat, he waited. I have been queen of this empire for 230 years, said. Her voice was tired in a way had never heard before. In that time, I have faced rebellions, plagues, economic disasters, and 3 separate wars. I have always found solutions. I have always protected my people. She turned to look at him. Her purple eyes were heavy with worry. But now I am facing something I do not know how to defeat. The Obsidian Covenant is not just a group of assassins. They are a movement. Thousands of who believe our species has become too weak to survive. They want to overthrow my family and return to the old ways, when we were warriors, when we conquered other worlds, when strength mattered more than wisdom." "Do they have a point?" asked. The queen's eyes narrowed, then slowly she nodded. "Yes, they do. My people have become fragile. We avoid conflict. We avoid pain. We have built a beautiful civilization, but it is a civilization of glass. One strong blow and it will shatter." She leaned forward. "That is why I need you." Frowned. "What can I do? I am one man, one human." "You are more than that." The queen stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. "When you saved my daughter, something changed. The footage of you burning, bleeding, refusing to fall spread across the empire. People watched it over and over. Do you know what they saw? A human being stupid." "No," turned back to face him. "They saw proof that flesh can be armor. They saw someone willing to suffer for another. They saw something we had forgotten was possible." She took a deep breath. "You showed my people that strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about breaking and continuing anyway." Was silent for a long moment. He understood what she was saying. He also understood what she was about to ask. "You want me to stay?" he said. "I want you to become the royal protector, formally, permanently." The queen's voice was steady but could hear the desperation underneath. "I want you to guard my daughter, to train our warriors, to be a symbol that the old strength is not dead, it has just taken a different form." "I would have to leave Earth service." "Yes." "I would have to live among aliens for the rest of my life." "Yes." "I would probably die here." "Yes," the queen met his eyes, "but you would die as one of us, as family, as legend." It was an incredible offer. It was also a terrible one. Would be giving up everything he knew, his home, his career, his species. He would be alone among beings who lived for centuries while he aged and died in what felt like moments to them. But when he thought about her smile in the garden, about the fear in her eyes when she asked if he would protect her, he opened his mouth to answer. The explosion threw him across the room. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed red. Through the window, saw fire and smoke rising from the lower levels of the palace. The Obsidian Covenant had come. Everything after that was chaos. Ran through the corridors, ignoring the pain in his shoulder where he had hit the wall. All around him were screaming, running, dying. The Covenant fighters moved through the palace like shadows, killing everyone they found. The royal guards fought back, but they were losing. Saw one guard take a single shot to the chest and collapse, his crystal bones shattering inside him. Another guard was cut down before she could even raise her weapon. 3,000 years of peace had made them soft. They had forgotten how to fight. Had not forgotten. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen guard and started shooting. His aim was not perfect, but it did not need to be. He just needed to slow the enemy down long enough to reach. The throne room was the most likely target. That was where the royal family would go during an attack. It had the strongest doors, the best defenses. That was where would be. That was where he needed to go. He killed 5 Covenant fighters on his way there. 6, 7. He lost count. Energy bolts burned his arms, his legs, his chest. He did not stop. He could not stop. Human bodies were built to keep moving even when they should fall. Adrenaline and fear and stubborn will pushed him forward through the smoke and blood. When he reached the throne room, the doors were broken open. Inside, he saw the queen and surrounded by the last of the royal guards, maybe a dozen soldiers, all wounded, all terrified. And facing them were at least 30 Covenant fighters. Did not think he moved. He burst through the broken doors, firing as he ran. 2 enemies fell. 3. Then his weapon ran out of power and he threw it at another fighter's head, knocking him down. He reached the queen, and just as the remaining Covenant fighters raised their weapons. "Get behind me," said. "There are too many," one of the guards whispered. "We cannot." "I said get behind me." Stepped forward, he was unarmed. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. He could barely stand. But he stood anyway. The Covenant leader, a tall with silver scars across his face, looked at with something like curiosity. "The human," he said, "the one who thinks he can protect them." "Yes," said. "You are injured, you have no weapon, you cannot possibly win." "No," agreed, "but I can make it hurt, I can make it slow, I can make you pay for every step you take toward them." He spread his arms wide, making himself the biggest target possible. "So go ahead, try to get through me." The Covenant leader stared at him for a long moment. Then he raised his weapon. Smiled, he thought about Earth. He thought about his life, his choices, all the moments that had led him here. He thought about Smile. Worth it, he decided, all worth it. The first shot hit him in the chest. He did not fall. The second shot hit his shoulder. He did not fall. The third, fourth, fifth shots hit him everywhere, burning through his uniform, through his skin, through his flesh. He did not fall. He took one step forward, then another, then another. The Covenant fighters started to back away. Fear replaced their confidence. This was impossible. No one could survive this. No one could keep moving. But kept moving. He was still moving when the palace reinforcements arrived. He was still moving when the Covenant fighters started to surrender. He was still moving when caught him, her thin arms wrapping around him, keeping him upright. "How," she whispered, "how are you still alive?" Looked at her, his vision was fading. His body was finally giving up. But he managed one more smile. "Humans," he said, "are very hard to kill." Then he collapsed. But he had done it. He had held the line. He had protected the ones who mattered. The throne room was covered in blood, most of it his. But the queen and the princess were alive. That was all that mattered. Woke up, which surprised him. He had been sure he was dead. The last thing he remembered was falling, was arms around him, was the strange peace that comes when you know you have done everything you could. He had expected darkness. He had expected nothing. Instead, he got a hospital room. The same white walls, the same silver machines, the same doctors looking at him like he was a miracle. 18 days, one of the doctors said. "You were unconscious for 18 days. We did not think you would survive the first night." "What happened?" His voice was barely a whisper. "You happened." The young doctor from before, the one who had studied him with such wonder, stepped forward. "We have reviewed the footage from the throne room over 100 times. You took 23 direct hits from military-grade energy weapons. You lost almost half your blood. 3 of your major organs were damaged beyond what we thought any species could survive." She paused, her eyes were wet. "And then you got back up, over and over again. You kept walking toward them while they tried to kill you. You made them afraid." Closed his eyes. He remembered the fear in the Covenant fighters' eyes. He remembered taking step after step through the fire and pain. "Did we win?" he asked. "Yes," the doctor smiled. "The Obsidian Covenant is broken. Their leaders are dead or captured. The rebellion is over. The Empire is safe." Nodded slowly. "Good, that was good." "The Queen wants to see you," the doctor added, "when you are strong enough to walk." "I am strong enough now," said. He was not, but he got up anyway. The throne room had been repaired. New crystal pillars stood where the old ones had fallen. New glass replaced the shattered windows. Everything was clean and beautiful again. But could still see the ghosts of that night. He could still smell the smoke and blood. Queen sat on her throne, dressed in her full royal regalia. Princess stood beside her, wearing a silver gown that caught the light like. They both watched as walked slowly down the long aisle toward them. He was still weak, his body still ached, but he held his head high. When he reached the throne, he tried to bow. Queen stopped him. "No," she said, "you do not bow to anyone, not anymore." She stood and walked down the steps to stand before him. This close could see the age in her eyes, 4 centuries of wisdom and worry and loss. But he could also see something new, something that looked like hope. The footage of what you did has spread across the galaxy, she said. Billions of beings have watched you walk through fire to protect my daughter. They have given you many names. The human shield, the bleeding wall, the soft one who would not fall. Almost laughed, almost. I was just doing my job, he said. No, shook her head. Your job ended months ago. What you did in that throne room was not duty. It was not obligation. It was choice. You chose to suffer. You chose to die. Because you cared about my daughter more than you cared about yourself. She reached up and touched his face. Her fingers were cool and light like. I asked you a question before the attack. I asked you to become the royal protector, to stay with us forever. She paused. I am asking you again, but this time I am offering something more. What? Family. The word hung in the air between them. My people live for centuries, continued. Yours do not. In the time you have left, perhaps 50 years, perhaps 60, you will age and weaken and eventually die. But during that time you will be one of us. Not a servant, not a guest, not a political tool, family. She stepped back and looked at. The princess came forward, her eyes bright with tears she was trying not to shed. I have never had a brother, said quietly. They do not form bonds like humans do. We are careful with our affections. We calculate the risks of caring too much about anyone. She reached out and took his hand. But you taught me that some risks are worth taking. You taught me that love is not weakness. It is the strongest thing there is. Looked at her. This strange, beautiful alien girl who had changed his life. This girl he had almost died for twice. I am not, he said. I do not live as long as you. I do not understand half of your customs. I am loud and crude and I bleed too much. Yes, agreed, smiling through her tears. You are all of those things and I do not care. Turned to look at the queen, the ruler of an empire that stretched across 1,000 worlds, the most powerful being he had ever met. Why, he asked, why would you do this for a human? His answer was simple. Because you did not let my daughter die, and because you showed my people what we had forgotten. She reached out and placed her hand over his heart. Strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about being broken and continuing anyway. You taught us that. Now let us thank you properly. Thought about Earth. He thought about the life he would be leaving behind, the career, the friends, the world he had known for 37 years. Then he thought about the queen, about this strange and beautiful empire that had somehow become home. Yes, he said, I accept. The years that followed were the best of his life. He trained a new generation of warriors, teaching them that courage mattered more than durability. He advised the queen on military matters, helping her build an army that could actually fight. He stood beside at ceremonies and celebrations, watching her grow from a frightened girl into a strong and capable woman. Human military advisors were invited to the empire. Scientists came to study the strange bond between and their human protector. A new alliance formed between Earth and the empire, built on the foundation of one man's stubborn refusal to die. Aged, of course. Humans always aged. His hair turned gray, then white. His body grew slow and tired. But even in his old age, he never stopped protecting the people he loved. When Cole finally died at the age of 94, the entire empire mourned. Queen, now over 500 years old, attended his funeral personally. She stood beside, who was now queen herself, and looked down at the simple human casket covered in flowers from 100 different worlds. He came to us made of meat and water and fragile bone, said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. He lived for less than a century, a heartbeat compared to our long lives, but in that heartbeat he changed everything. She placed her crystalline hand on his casket. He taught an empire of glass what it means to be unbreakable. He showed us that strength is not about how much damage you can avoid, it is about how much damage you can take and still keep going. He loved my daughter. He protected my people. He became one of us. She stepped back. Tears like liquid silver ran down her ancient face. Rest now, Cole. You have earned it, and we will never forget what you gave us. They buried him in the royal gardens, beside the glowing flowers where he and had sat so many years ago. His grave marker was simple, just his name and 2 words. He stayed. And for centuries after, whenever they felt afraid, whenever they faced a challenge that seemed impossible, they would remember the human who had walked through fire for them. They would remember his smile as he stood between death and the ones he loved. They would remember that strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about being broken and continuing anyway. That was what Cole taught them. That was his gift to the stars.